everybody to GLOBEBUSTERS.
We accept the reality of the world with which we're presented. It's as simple as that.
And welcome to GLOBEBUSTERS Season 9, Episode 12, Centered. Should be a good show. We're going to talk about, obviously we were all told that the Earth is a tilted, wobbling, spinning ball in a vacuum, shooting around the sun in an ever-expanding universe of nothingness. And when you actually examine it a bit further, you will discover that all evidence says quite the opposite, that the Earth is stationary and fixed in the center. All observations show this to such an extent that the current model has had to update itself to actually say that it will always look like we are in the center. So should be a good show for you. It is again called Centered. And so before we get started, we're going to introduce the panel. First, we have with us none other than Zachary Zabala from Good Times for All. Zach, how's it going, brother?
Austin, doing great, man. How was your week?
Pretty good, man. Hectic. How about yourself?
I know the moving is rough. So, yeah, I feel for you, brother. Yeah, it was a good week here. It was warm, but not bad. I mean, got some rain and all that good stuff. We're finally getting rain around here. The last 2 years, I guess we're in a drought, a mild drought. And this year we're actually getting thunderstorms and rain. It feels more like living in the woods.
Yeah, man, I hear you. I think South Carolina's weather is actually overall pretty dope.
Yeah, I love it. For someone, I just moved from the north because I couldn't stand the cold anymore. The negative 10 degrees every year. My body couldn't take it. It hurt. It hurt to breathe. It hurt to do all kinds of things. So yeah, I think this is home. Maybe a little bit further north, maybe up into North Carolina just a little bit. But yeah, I love this area. The Kakalaki area is awesome.
Nice. Yeah, I'm thinking the opposite, a little further south, but I feel you. Compared to the north, that would be good. And I think we just saw my boy Iru jump on. So Iru from Nor Para Todos, how's it going, brother?
Hello, Austin. Hello, Zack. How you doing, guys?
Great.
You finish your moving?
No, everything got pushed back a month.
All right, man. I have a moving here, but not for me, but for Linda. She went to France, so I understand what is moving. Not maybe at your level because we don't have child and a lot of other stuff, but it's very I'm not gonna say painful, but a little stress at least.
She's not moving like to Paris, right? Somewhere else in France, I'm hoping?
No. Just 30 minutes and temporarily. It's around a month and no more than that.
Okay. Yeah, I know. It's getting kind of crazy over there. Or has been for a little while.
No, of course. But I don't like, capital cities to live. And it doesn't matter if it's in Argentina,
yeah, it doesn't matter where you
France,
are.
in Germany, whatever. It's crazy. And here we are in the farm, so it's very quiet, it's very calm, and I don't change that for nothing. At least must be something really, really important. But no, we are like 8 hours from Paris, where I live now.
Nice, excellent.
Cool, man. So yeah, if you guys have anything you want to throw in about this subject at any point, go ahead, of course. But yeah, I think it's pretty important. I don't know if you guys have anything you want to say before we jump into it, but when I discovered that at the highest levels of academia, whether it's astronomy, astrophysics, you name it, which all falls within cosmology, that actually there's no evidence at all that the Earth is moving around the sun, that the solar system is a real thing, that the universe is expanding. And, when people first hear someone say that, they think, oh, this must just be a stupid flat earther that doesn't understand science or whatever. But come to find out, there's literally nothing. There's actually not one piece of evidence that's
And
even
there are
claimed
people
to
with
be exclusive.
big credentials that also will state the exact same thing Austin just said, that it is an ideology that they've chosen, this geocentric or heliocentric model. There is no proof of it, but they choose it.
Yeah,
And
based on philosophical mean it's not a science choice. And in fact, it's still one of the biggest discussion in science. Maybe it's unfortunately they don't take into account the variable of the flatness versus the globe. But the fact that they don't they try it. I mean, you can see all the experiment they're trying to find the movement or the rotation or where we are in this supposedly vast solar system, but all the experiments conclude that we are in the center and we are stationary, and they don't have other choice than just choose their result based on philosophy or biased direction.
Yeah, it's really crazy, man. Like I mean, we of course we've discovered that the Earth is not a ball, meaning the surface isn't curving. It's a plane. We live on a very big extended plane. But even this part of the discussion is not known. And I think there's a good argument to be had that this should be the first thing that we discuss. Because if someone is unaware of the fact that they made a philosophical decision to claim that everything that we see is an illusion to trick us into believing that we're in the center of the cosmos when we're actually a tiny, insignificant speck of dust in an insignificant corner tucked away in darkness and nothingness, is pretty wild, right? Like, people don't really know that. So for me, it's like I don't really expect to be able to discuss the intricacies of the radius and the lack of a geometric horizon and stuff with someone that can't really accept this part of it. What's your guys' take on that before we jump into some of the specifics? Like, do you think that this should be kind of the first part of the discussion, the motion and the geocentric aspect, or do you think you should just go straight for the jugular with the flat Earth?
No, this is a nice, for me at least, a lot of times in my, I have a lot of interviews in radio or some TV shows. And this is a really good argument for start, at least for me, because you can aim directly to our senses. Maybe when you start into the flatness or you start discussion, if the air is flat or is spherical, a lot of people, they don't understand mathematics involved in behind the calculation and the distance, the triangulation, etc. But this is something that every human being at least can understand. You need to prove me that we are right now rotating, and this this floor, this ground is moving around something, because if you use your eyes and you use your education system, what the education system tell you about the moon? Is the moon who is moving? It's moving the moon? Or yeah, of course the moon is moving. Well, how do you know? Because I see the moon moving. Okay, now using the same eyes, the same sense, is the sun moving? And then immediately start like shortcut, not shortcut, I don't know how to say it. Start making like dissonance in their mind, and then you can bring it and say, okay, well, then let's discuss that, if the earth moving, or is the sun moving and the moon moving and the firmament rotating and blah blah blah. And for me, it's a nice argument. I don't know if I explained very well, but remember that you are my translator guy, Austin. But for me, it's a really nice topic to start a lot of times.
well, yeah, and there are a lot of people that like to discuss this topic from the heliocentric model's point of view, and they're not aware, because I mean, I was never taught this. That the Earth, there's no experiment or observation at all. if you will, that will tell you that the Earth is in motion, whether it be rotating or around the sun, or there's nothing that is definitive. And I mean, they've even gone to the point to call, you know, the tests and observations that they've come up with failures, Aries failure. I've still never heard a good explanation of why it does what it does if it is, in fact, the Earth that is what's in motion. There's never been a good example of, or a good answer for that from the heliocentric model. They just call it a failure. And it's
and what's so crazy is what they say to try to cop themselves out of all of this, including Aries failure, and with no actual explanation or logic or anything. They just say reference frame. That's it. They literally just say, oh, well, you just don't understand reference frames, or it's just a different reference frame, or just from our reference frame it looks like that. Like, it's just it's like the third aspect of their trinity. You know, you have gravity, refraction, and reference frame. And that's what they say. That's all I've ever heard for Aries failure, is just to baselessly say the phrase reference frame.
Yeah, that doesn't cut it for me. Oh.
Yeah, it doesn't even make sense. So yeah, and if anyone's ever been watching my channel or anything, then they've probably seen that I put together a PowerPoint called Religion Disguised as Science. I actually covered a good amount of it on GLOBEBUSTERS back in the day. And if you see here, there is just an endless amount of quotes here explaining all of these astrophysicists and astronomers saying that the Earth could be geocentric. But I do want to kind of break this one down to start us off. And this is George Ellis. He says, quote, "I can construct for you a spherically symmetrical universe with Earth at its center, and you cannot disprove it based on observations." So that includes parallax, aberration, retrograde, redshift. These are all observations. Anytime we look in the sky and we look at things, right, that's an observation. Okay, so you cannot disprove this model with the Earth at the center based on observations. You can only exclude it on philosophical grounds. In my view, there's absolutely nothing wrong in that. I strongly disagree. What I want to bring into the open is the fact that we are using philosophical criteria in choosing our models, and a lot of cosmology tries to hide that. In fact, all of modern mainstream science tries to hide that.
Yeah, see, I don't like he said at the beginning there, he doesn't have a problem with it. I wouldn't have a problem with that either. You just need to explain that it is a philosophy, that this isn't set in stone. This is how we see it. It's just like saying the model of the atom. A good teacher will tell you, we really don't know what the atom looks like. We have a model of what we think it looks like and what's going on inside of it, but we really don't know. And a good teacher will tell you that. A bad teacher will just tell you, oh, there's a proton and neutrons, and then they're surrounded by these electrons just flying around them. But yeah, you have to distinguish between the two, whether it is, sound and matter of fact, or this is the way we teach it because this is how we believe it to be. But then you start getting into religion, and they don't want to be considered a religion. That's the opposite of what they want to be.
And side note, it really looks like atoms are just like one of the smaller areas or volumes that we can observe, and it's spherical frequency. And it's a double torus frequency that has centrifugal divergence, centripetal convergence, just like a torus field, and that's it. And then you look at how it moves, how it vibrates, what its frequency is, and there's different frequencies and stuff within this area, and they call them all kinds of little particles. But it is very similar, where this philosophical idea, in that case, materialism, being that everything is material or derives from material, all that exists, has forced their interpretation of the phenomena. And in this case, again, basically materialism, right, has dictated their interpretation of what we see in the sky. What's interesting, and I think a lot of people already know this, but to kind of give you an idea of the history here, This is Albert Einstein, of course, and it says here, this guy invented special relativity to counter experiments that revealed the Earth was motionless in space. This eventually led him to general relativity, which forced him to accept a motionless Earth in the center of the universe as a viable cosmological system. So ironically, Einstein just found himself having to concede the very thing he was trying to avoid with his first theory. And then, of course, whoever doesn't know, there's something called Michelson-Morley, and they shot lasers perpendicular to each other. They weren't actually lasers, they didn't exist yet, but beams of light. And based on the assumption that the Earth is moving around the sun, then the lasers should have caused an interference pattern like this, because one's going with the motion, one's going against it. But in fact, they saw this instead. They saw this result. As you see, they're not perfectly in line. They are slightly separated. Now, a whole nother show could explain that Dayton Miller, over 5,200,000 times, replicated this experiment and always found a fringe shift, and actually found that this fringe shift correlates directly to the equinoxes and altitude, showing that it's actually coming from the sky. Whatever's affecting this is actually motion coming down from the sky, a force coming down from the sky above us, because as you change altitude, it changes. The effect gets greater, and it changes with the equinox, where the greatest and the least amount of fringe shift fall directly on the equinox. And he did this 5 million times. So what they had to do was explain why it didn't show what it should if the Earth was revolving. What the mainstream will tell you, of course, is that this disproved the ether. But it, of course, did no such thing. I mean, the ether and the motion of the Earth were both assumed going into the experiment, to the test, and they didn't get the results expected, so they had to come up with a way to explain it. Because again, this is what was expected based on the one light going with the motion of the Earth around the sun, one going against it, then the light should be different. So they basically just said the apparatus contracted, and that one of the light beams did actually travel further. You just can't tell because that path contracted and looked the same as the other one, and despite it actually being different, they claimed that was instrumental error, and actually they were exactly the same. They did the math on how much it should have been off and said, oh, well, the path must have contracted that much. So that's what started this whole fiasco.
Yeah, and again, they start the premise wrong, because they assume that we live in an open system where the Earth is a tiny speck of dust going around the sun, and the ether is supposedly outside of our system. So that is from the beginning, your premise is completely unjustified. You cannot justify that premise. When we talk about ether, at least in my opinion, we are talking about we are in an enclosed system where the ether is inside us. It's not outside of our flat Earth.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in this experiment, what they supposedly trying to prove is that the Earth is moving with or against or whatever this ether, and the ether is filling the vacuum of space, and the sun is what it is, and the other planets are what it is, and we live in this giant universe and things like that. So that's from the beginning is you are assuming a lot of things.
Exactly. And then what happens is Einstein comes along and he's like, wait a minute, we got to explain this away. And he says, this test led me to special relativity. Then he says, I've come to the belief that the motion of the Earth cannot be detected by any optical experiment, though the Earth moves around the sun. So this is an older PowerPoint. I left that part off. And despite the claims that's cherry picking. Yeah, exactly. Like he basically says, we can't actually detect it, but I believe it's happening anyway. So leaving off the end of it doesn't change the point, which is that even Einstein himself admitted when proposing the theory that there's no optical experiment that can detect the motion of the Earth. And he goes on to say there's no terrestrial experiment, meaning there's nothing you can do on the Earth to detect its motion around the sun, which means also its rotation. Because if you can prove the Earth's rotating, then it has to be revolving. So you can't actually detect its motion. right? You can detect motion of the sky, a sidereal rotation, and it's either the sky moving or the Earth moving. And what would determine which one it is determining if the Earth is moving around the sun. And here he is saying there's nothing we can do on the sun or on the Earth to actually detect it, to measure it, to verify it. Everything shows us that the Earth is effectively stationary. They all give us a negative result. So, and I have an endless amount of quotes here, of course. This is in my Telegram. But here's Michelson saying, it contradicts the idea that the Earth moves, and it's over and over. I mean, there are so many modern and older astrophysicists here and astronomers explaining. I mean, it's just insane how many I have here. So
yeah, and the important thing is not the quotes; it's the experiment.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't have even one experiment. I mean, we can, write a lot of quotes, but show me the proof.
Correct. Yeah, it's not really. We're not appealing to the authority of these people. We're actually appealing to what caused them to say this, right? And it's the experiments and the lack of evidence. So what I want to do is play a few minutes of this video on Robertson Genes's channel, and if no one knows, he made the movie. He produced a documentary, The Principle, which is still probably one of the best documentaries breaking down the philosophical bias entailed within the Copernican principle to this day. I had him on my show, and we talked for a couple hours, so I encourage you to check that out. It was pretty telling. That's In the Field episode 2, Robertson Genes on my channel. And we basically just bury heliocentrism the entire time. But anyway, the reason I want to show this video, or this part of it, if I do have the proper place, is because one of the major things that people want to invoke to claim that they know that the Earth is in fact moving is Foucault's pendulum and ring laser gyros, and they claim that this detects the motion of the Earth. Now, obviously on a basic level, that is a correlation and causation conflation. It rhymes, so it's a conflation of correlation and causation, where you see the effect.
One of your rhymes you're gonna spit.
Yeah,
hey, right there.
And it's obviously you see the effect, and if the effect's real, it doesn't mean that your assumed cause of it's real. You need to be able to verify the cause to verify it's real. Everyone knows that the sky moves, that there's movement in the sky. Everyone knows that. The question is it really moving, i.e. the Earth is not, and it's in the center, right? The flat Earth position is that the stuff in the sky moves because the stuff in the sky moves. And then the globe Earth position is the stuff in the sky is not moving in relation to us. It just appears to be moving because we're moving. So we're trying to determine, well, which one's true, right? Is it the sky moving or is it the Earth moving? So they'll bring up Foucault's pendulum. They'll bring up ring laser gyros. They'll bring up hurricanes, right? They'll bring up the illusory Coriolis that's accounted for with trajectories, which it's not. And so the question is, what's really going on? Now, like we just covered, Michelson-Morley was trying to detect the orbit, and Dayton Miller in the 1920s did this experiment 5 million times, which is like impossible to even wrap your mind around. His whole life, he's just continually doing Michelson-Morley with different variables, accounting for everything you can think of, with different materials, different environments, different altitudes, different times of the year, intricately documenting all of it 5 million times. Okay, and what he found is that fringe shift is coming from the sky because it changes with altitude and it changes with the time of the year. This should not happen according to special relativity. According to special relativity, there is no fringe shift. That's just an instrumental error, and you'll get no fringe shift because the path contracted. So, all that to say, it boils down to this claim, effectively, of, well, we know the Earth is spinning. That means it must be revolving around the sun. When in fact, we know it's either the sky or the Earth spinning, and we need to figure out, is it moving around the sun to determine which one of those two it is. Right?
Now
That's
explain,
true.
just for those who might not know, contract. When they say that this path contracted.
Yeah.
They're saying that it actually shortened.
Correct. Yeah. They're claiming that the path the path it traveled physically got shorter, but that you can't tell because the entire reference frame that you're in, all the space around you, everything with you, yourself, it contracted the same amount, so it looks like it didn't get shorter.
That must be nice to be able to just say stupid stuff like that, and then that be the answer. Be like, okay, let's go do something else now.
Science, bro.
Oh, man.
So let's play a few minutes of this video, and they're going to break down the three inertial forces, Coriolis, centrifugal, and Euler forces, how they attribute this to a tilted, wobbling, spinning ball. But in fact, this would be perfectly explained with the cosmos moving majestically around the Earth, which is what we observe, which is what everyone's observed. Every ancient civilization for all recorded histories observed this. You've only observed this. All astronomers, all astrophysicists, all branches of science or pseudoscience. This is all they've ever observed. This is all that is observed. The question is, how do we explain it? So I think this is an important part of it to break it down. I'll try to make sure that everyone understands the concept. But once you realize this, there's really no unseeing it. And that's why I think that this may be one of the most important things to bring up to people, because it's kind of like taking the red pill. Although I don't suggest taking pills from strangers in lab coats or leather coats, but it is like there's no returning from it. So once you allow yourself to be honest enough to truly understand this part of it, it all begins to unravel, and you will find yourself sitting over here with the crazy flat earthers realizing that the Earth is in fact not a spinning ball. So let's play it. You guys tell me if you guys if the sound is good and everything, and same over at YouTube, and hopefully everything works, and we'll play a few minutes of it. If you guys want to jump in at any point, just say something. I'll pause the video and we'll just watch a few minutes of it so we can kind of get an idea of what's going on here.
Cool.
All right, let's go.
Mother force. In other words, the angular momentum of the rotating universe will produce centrifugal, Coriolis, and Euler forces by nature, forces that actually move objects in one direction or another. We learn this, for example, from Einstein's paper on general relativity. He says, quote, "We need not necessarily trace the existence of the centrifugal forces back to an absolute movement of K', that is, a rotation or revolution of the Earth. We can instead just as well trace them back to the rotational movement of the distant ponderable masses, that is, the universe of stars, in relation to K', the Earth, whereby we treat K', the Earth, as being at rest." Unquote. In other words, Einstein is saying that the centrifugal force that occurs when the Earth rotates so that a slight bulge can be measured at the Earth's equator, the reciprocal is also required by relativity's physical dynamics, so that the cause of the bulge is that the universe is rotating around a fixed Earth. Since the Earth does not know the universe is rotating around it, the cause for the bulge cannot be a difference in direction or an archetype of relative motion, but must be from a precise force that is generated by the rotating universe, and is transferred directly to the Earth's equator. In the geocentric system, it is this actual force that, if the skater were to start spinning on a fixed Earth, would cause the glass of water to fall off her shoulder and hit the ice. It is what we understand as the centrifugal force. By the same token, Einstein's relativity also says the same about the Coriolis force. Einstein says the following. Quote, "First, if one accelerates a heavy shell of matter S, then a mass enclosed by that shell experiences an accelerative force. Second, if one rotates the shell relative to the fixed stars about an axis going through its center, a Coriolis force arises in the interior of the shell, that is, the plane of a Foucault pendulum is dragged around." Unquote. Taken from Einstein's 1913 letter to Ernst Mach. In other words, Einstein is saying that if we allow the universe to rotate around a fixed Earth, then any masses that are contained in the universe, such as galaxies, stars, suns, and moons, are going to feel the curving of the Coriolis force. Additionally, a little of that force is also going to be felt at the surface of the Earth, since the surface is 4,000 miles from the Earth's center of mass. Likewise, it is this circular moving Coriolis force that will connect with the Foucault pendulum, and cause the pendulum to turn against a fixed Earth. It is the same force that, when the skater begins spinning on a fixed Earth, would cause the ping-pong ball on the surface of the glass of water to move in a curved direction and not a straight line. In the heliocentric system, the explanation for the Foucault pendulum is, of course, different. The fixed universe and its stars are understood to be aligned with the Foucault pendulum. As the Earth daily rotates underneath and independent of the pendulum, the observer, who is held to and aligned with the Earth as the Earth rotates, will see the situation as if the pendulum is moving in a circle around the observer. In the
Hold on, stop
heliocentric
it there for
system,
a second. That's a horrible demonstration. I mean, it's never taken from the top of the pole, and it's still not even sticking 90 degrees out from where it is touching the ball. So, yeah, I mean, it should be at an angle, all crazy.
Even if it was perfect, right? There's still no way that you would be able to prove the difference between if the Earth was moving underneath it or if the pendulum was just going in a circle.
And don't they have one of these near the South Pole? I'm pretty sure they built
Yeah, in my
one.
house
Is your house?
in Argentina, which is near the pole. No, but they don't have in the equator, and they don't have. I say supposedly, I think they have one, but I never found a video or something like that. Especially because in nowadays you cannot trust just a simple video made by themselves. You know, it's you don't see the whole setup. It's crazy to at least believe in the Foucault pendulum, not believe in a gyroscope, for example.
I know. Imagine if they actually had to show stuff like we do. You know, like when John Savage did his gyroscope experiment for 6 hours, he had the short version just showing you that it didn't change, but then he had this 6-hour version that you could sit there and watch each second go by and tick by on the clock. They would never do anything like that for us.
That's not good enough, Zach. It's got to have the barometric pressure, the level of brightness that day, etc.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, and
So-
like obviously this is throwing the globe and all these examples, and obviously the Earth's not a globe either. But hopefully the part that's important that people understood was if the Earth is not moving but the entire cosmos is moving around it with its angular momentum, that would actually cause a force on the interior of the system. And a really crude analogy would be moving your hand over a bathtub full of water, and you can move the water without physically touching the water because that air is transferring the motion down. Well, we have air, we have whatever space is made of, and we seemingly have a background called the ether. And these are all going to transfer this motion down from the cosmos moving around us. And so it will effectively press down on us spinning. Right? And this is seemingly pretty undeniable when you look at Michelson-Morley and Dayton-Miller's replication, and you look at Foucault's pendulum is very debatable, and then you look at ring laser gyros. When you look at it, it does seem like there is a direct correlation with the spin in the sky and what we experience on the Earth. Do you guys have any takes on that?
Now, can you repeat that again?
Yeah, so when for example, when we did Michelson-Morley, we did see a fringe shift. And when Dayton Miller replicated it, he found one every time. And what he found was when you go at higher altitudes, you have a greater effect. And whenever you continue to test it throughout the year, you have the biggest and smallest fringe shift falling right on the fall and spring equinoxes, showing that Michelson-Morley's fringe shift that's detected is not just some fluke. It was replicated 5 million times. And their model tries to claim it's just instrumental error, even though he did everything you could think. So what it shows is that there's something moving above us, which we all see, and that actually is affecting those light beams or lasers now, right? Where the preferred direction based on the spin of the sky. And all of these things are pretty substantial evidence that's used for technology every day that shows that the sky is moving and it's causing forces to come down to the Earth. At least that's how I understand it. I know that was a lot, so what's your take? Okay. Let me make sure everyone's still here. Yeah, everyone, you guys can still hear me? Well, I don't know if anyone's speaking, but we're gonna play the video a little bit more, and then I'll make sure the audio is working and stuff.
Circular movement of the pendulum is called a Coriolis effect, not a Coriolis force, since the different
No, if
positions between the pendulum
anyone's speaking,
and
but
the
we're gonna
Earth
play
are
the
not
video.
caused by a force but only the opposite directions of the Earth against the pendulum. Of course, one might ask how, in the heliocentric system, the pendulum stays aligned with the stars. Newton's reason for this would be that the pendulum possesses inertia, and inertia is the quality of mass such that the
Incarnate
mass resists
Jeran's,
being moved unless a force greater than the mass is strong enough.
Jeran's technical.
Okay, so I have no idea what just happened. My call just ended, but we're back. I mean, you guys.
Yeah, I think it was the Jeran spirit in terms of technical stuff. You
guys couldn't hear me, or you were talking and I couldn't hear you.
No, we
couldn't hear you. Everything just went.
And the streams went down.
What?
Yeah, for a second. Yeah, it showed you dropped out of the call here, and then the stream went down. But they're saying audio went out for a bit, but it's back up now. That's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
What
Completely.
in the world?
In the world production. Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, hopefully everything's working now. I'll go check on Rockfin and stuff.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't answer you. I didn't even know that was you when you got back. I thought that was. I didn't know.
No, you're good. You're good. I mean, I have no idea what happened. I was just sitting there talking, so I don't know. Oh man.
Wow.
All right, so we'll try and play this video. Let me go check on Rockfin. Hopefully everything's working now. I have no idea what everything seemed to be working on my end, and then all of a sudden it just said my Skype call ended. So I don't know what happened, but all right, let's play a little bit more of this video. And if you guys want to jump in again, just say something. I'll pause it and let me go check on Rockfin.
Alrighty.
Enough to move it. Be that as it may, the important point is that in the Newtonian or heliocentric system, the bulge of the Earth, the circular movement.
Oh wait, can you guys hear it?
No.
Oh my gosh.
So good.
All right, you guys should be able to hear it now.
Of hurricanes, the circular movement of the
Okay, cool.
Foucault pendulum, and the circular movement of the ping-pong ball, are all effects of one object moving against another, not forces. In the geocentric system, all the circular and bulging movements are caused by...
Okay, so this is actually a decent depiction. It would be, in my opinion, it'd be more of a torus field and it'd be cut through the middle. But the idea is that the entire cosmos here is moving around the Earth inside. So obviously, suspend belief of the idea that it's going to keep showing a sphere. It's going to show spheres everywhere. It seems to be more of a torus field. But the idea is that just kind of wrap your mind around everything we see in the sky is moving around us at a pretty immense speed if you think about how big everything is, right? And so just imagine something that big moving that fast. Of course, it's going to cause some effects on the Earth, right?
Yeah, you would think it would be crazy insane, depending on where you are in your rotation for that day, just because it's moving 30 kilometers a second in that direction, that path around the sun. You would figure whatever path is facing the trajectory, there would definitely be some kind of, you would feel something. And then the same with being on the sides or being on the backside, it would feel different, you would think. And we feel nothing at all.
Crazy. I'm hoping that Rockfin's working. Hopefully you guys can give me feedback in the Rockfin chat or in YouTube, but I think it's working. So, yeah. All right. So, this is depicting the entire cosmos moving around the Earth to give you an idea, and then it's going to break down. What's so funny about this, and the reason I'm bringing this up, is because even within their paradigm, even if you use Newtonian or Einsteinian mechanics, both of which are laughably wrong, they would have to concede that using their own frameworks, that if the Earth was stationary, you would get these effects. The centrifugal, Coriolis, and Euler forces would affect a stationary Earth. If you believe in the heliocentric model, you cannot deny this. Right? You literally can't, because of Newtonian and Einsteinian mechanics, which is why I mean, this just further solidifies the idea that really it's just a philosophy, and there's no evidence exclusive, no matter what theories you assume. So, all right, let's hear them out a little bit longer.
All the circular and bulging movements are caused by actual inertial forces created by the rotating universe that connect with the Earth or the skater and cause objects on them to move or expand. There is another very important dimension of the three inertial forces that will explain how the geocentric system operates. As noted earlier, the standard equation of the three inertial forces takes the form 2 omega cross v, which is the Coriolis force, plus omega cross r, which is the centrifugal centripetal force, plus d omega over dt cross r, which is the Euler force. Notice that the Coriolis force has twice the magnitude of the centrifugal centripetal force. For our investigative purposes, what does this mean and how should it be applied? Before we answer that question, let's verify this fact from Wikipedia. All physics authorities say the same, but we will use Wikipedia for convenience. The Wikipedia article on Coriolis force says the following. Quote, "In this case the Coriolis force is twice the magnitude of the centrifugal force, and it points in the centripetal direction. The vector sum of the centrifugal force and the Coriolis force is the total fictitious force, which in this case points in centripetal direction." Unquote. Notice that the total force is centripetal, that is, towards the center of the rotation, where the center of mass is located. Also notice that Wikipedia calls this, quote, "the total fictitious force," unquote. But, as we noted earlier, this is what the Newtonian system must call the total force, since it believes this force is not real but is caused only by different directions of movement of adjacent objects. In the geocentric system, the phrase would be the total inertial force or the total real force. Let's look at another explanation from Wikipedia's article of the same force equation. Quote, "It is seen that the Coriolis acceleration not only cancels the centrifugal acceleration, but together they provide a net centripetal, radially inward component of acceleration, that is directed toward the center of rotation." Unquote.
This part is super important. So, it is seen that the Coriolis acceleration not only cancels the centrifugal acceleration, but together they provide a net centripetal, or centripetal, radially inward component of acceleration that is directed toward the center of rotation. Okay? Meaning...
Show me that. How does that work in, like, a lab? Can they do this in a lab? Create a centripetal force that sucks things to something?
Well, okay. So let's talk about that. So if we have, so what is your contention specifically? That centrifugal force is real, but centripetal force is not real?
Yeah, I've never understood centripetal. The whole idea that because there's this outward force being created from the rotation, that in turn there's an inward force for some reason. I don't see where that inward force would be coming from.
Okay, perfect. So what I'm going to do, let me find a picture real fast and see if we can have a meeting of the minds here. Because I do disagree. And I'm going to show why. And I agree. If your contention is with their explanation, I agree. But I disagree with the idea that it's not real. Let me show you why. Give me just a sec. Here we go. Okay. Done. Image. Okay. So this right here is a Farrell cell image, right? Okay. So you have both centrifugal and centripetal acceleration in a magnetic field. You have a conjugate geometry. The inside of the donut and the outside of the donut. So if we live on this white line flipped around, I don't know if I can flip it around, but then how do you do that? Alt flip. I don't know how to do it.
Maybe if you move to one of the corner edges, it might give you like a curved arrow. Keep on going a little bit more out towards the edge, even more.
Wait, let me find it.
It's OBS. If it's OVH, just make a right click and go to transform and rotate.
Nice.
Eru.
Okay, there we go. Save the day. All right, I'm gonna make this a little bigger. So if we live on this white line here, right, then we would be experiencing the top half. Now I know that people debate: is it a quadrupole? Do we live inside this? Do we not? To me, the evidence shows that we live inside that, right? And if we lived on this side, we would be experiencing both centrifugal and centripetal forces, because both of them exist within a magnet. You have the dielectric and you have the magnet.
Yeah, I could see it that way in a magnetic field. I just can't see it in a body that's rotating.
Yeah, the material world, not in
creating
the energy
that.
world.
Just taking a solid ball and spinning it and getting a centripetal force to create just because of the motion. Now, if you started invoking, bringing in magnetism and things like that into it, yeah, I can absolutely see that you could get all kinds of things to happen. But just strictly as a physical body spinning, I don't see that as being a cause for a centripetal force.
Right. Well, in this situation, the Earth is, as applied, the Earth is stationary, right, which is where we have some material. Then we have whether material, immaterial, who knows, the cosmos moving around us. And we have an ether. We have a background medium. So, I mean, as far as I can tell, we live in a giant torus field, right? But either way, it's actually it's the cosmos moving along with the ether that would cause this net centripetal force.
Mm-hmm.
And it would actually be stronger. It would be stronger than the centrifugal force, because that's the source of the magnetism, right? This black hole here, for who doesn't know, the magnet will actually be stronger the bigger the black hole is, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter.
Shorter the lines will be, like the white lines in the top, or even the top two pictures. Those lines will be more snugged in to the black hole when the magnet is stronger, when it has a stronger Gauss rating.
Exactly.
The weaker magnets are more fun to play with on a ferrocell because the lines go out, beyond the edge of the ferrocell real big. Even with that one 12-incher I had, the lines would be all the way out to the edge and you couldn't even see them. But then you bring in a really powerful magnet and all the lines are snug, tight, real close into it.
Exactly. And this may be counterintuitive. What that means is the bigger the magnetic field, the weaker it is. So you may think like, oh, the magnetic field's bigger because it's stronger, but it's quite the opposite. The greater the spatial extension of the magnetic field, the weaker it is, which means that the bigger that black hole is, the stronger it is, which means that the actual power or magnitude is coming from the center, right? And so that would be the strongest portion of the magnetic field. That would be where you have the centripetal force moving radially inward, right? And so that would be if you were to combine the two, you would have a net centripetal force. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's how I see it. But I guess the point is that, now the side note here, this seems to be a more accurate depiction of what could be happening. And then here in this video, they're like confining their explanation within like an Einsteinian or specifically a Newtonian framework, right? They're using Newtonian physics and they're explaining that in Newtonian physics, they have to account for the Coriolis, for the centrifugal and Euler forces, but they claim that they're fictitious. And these are called inertial forces. And they claim that they're all fictitious. And in a geocentric cosmos, they would be actual forces. They would be real. Right? So that's the fundamental difference here. It's just like in a geocentric position, the movement in the sky would be actual. And in the heliocentric system, it would be apparent, an illusion, right? It wouldn't be real. It would be fictitious motion. It would just appear to be happening because of our reference frame. So that's the distinction here, is one side is saying this is reality, what we observe is reality, what we measure is reality. The other side's saying what we observe and what we measure is an illusion. So this is just like flat Earth in that sense, right? Like we're saying, oh, the horizon Well, the word horizontal comes from horizon because the horizon's horizontal. We measure vertically above that horizontal sea level to get elevation perpendicular to that horizontal because the sea level's horizontal, right? Like the sun looks like it's moving in the sky because the sun is moving in the sky. The sun and the moon look like they're the same size because they're the same size. Our position is the default empirical position, and this even goes for geocentrism. We're saying that we see stuff move around the earth because everything moves around the earth. And they're claiming that that's just an illusion. And we're saying that if you detect any of this motion on the earth, it's because the stuff in the sky is moving over top of earth, and you're able to detect that motion. And as far as I can tell, it's within a torus field. So, and this is a bit in the weeds, but I think it's important. I hope that makes sense to people. And there are better illustrations of, the centripetal and centrifugal forces, the motion. You can look at Charles Proto Steinmetz, Oliver Heaviside, Maxwell, Tesla, right? Like Charles Proto Steinmetz has the most famous depiction of this.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It really is. When you see it, it looks like it's supposed to do that. It's natural. And so that's what you would say an atom is, actually. A little ball of energy that's creating a torus field.
Yeah, or like the torus field, effectively just like that top circle, you can draw a circle around it. Or any of these pictures, you could draw a circle around it, it would be 3D, so it would be a sphere. And I think it's basically this. It's a torus field, it's like spherical frequency. They isolate that area. There's nothing material, they're not probing it, they're not touching it, they're not shooting stuff at it. It's just an area where they see an interaction within that volume. If you were to have like another concentrated area or something like that come into contact with it, you'll see that it interacts at that point because it's a spherical frequency. It's an area or volume, right, that is effectively a sphere. Because you could draw a sphere or a circle in all directions around a torus field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
This is what, in my opinion, this is what an atom is. An atom, just if you could actually see an atom, this is what you would see. Well, you can't see it, you can't touch it, because just like this, you can't see it, right? And this is actually fluid being illuminated. That's what we're seeing in the ferrocell. We're not seeing the magnetic field. We're seeing the distribution of the magnetic field within that fluid illuminated by LED lights.
Yeah, there's little tiny iron filings. I mean, microscopic. And yeah, they're floated in this really thin fluid. And when you put a magnet around there, all those iron filings in the fluid kind of line up to the magnetic field around it. Now, iron filings will do this without the fluid even. It happens very quickly because most of them get sucked to the magnet right away. But go look at some magnets being dropped over iron filings in slow motion. And as there's a really good one, he's dropping it on like a cloth that has a bunch of iron filings in it. And when the magnet hits the cloth, it like bounces up. And when it does, all the iron filings are shaped like a torus field around the magnet in midair. It's amazing. Just beautiful the way it all works. But it happens so quickly. And with the ferrocell, they kind of get stuck in the fluids more.
Yeah, it's I think one of the best.
Yeah.
One of the best inventions. Yeah, exactly. One of the best inventions.
We tried to get a paramagnetic or a paracell, but again, the interaction happened so quickly that we'd have to figure out a way to do it, maybe with a much denser medium. I'm not sure, but the para happens very quickly, that initial push. And then after that, it's not like ferro that's quite strong. It's a very weak force. So it wouldn't. You could only see it for about a split second, and then it would kind of just all do whatever it wanted after that. We were looking into it. We were going to use copper. There's certain sports cars, BMWs, that use copper brake lining, and the brake fluid that they use for that actually breaks down the copper lining into little nanoparticles of copper, and we were going to try to use that brake fluid. along with some other things. But yeah, the more research we did on it, we found that it really wouldn't be worth all the effort we were trying to put into it.
Yeah, like
But
if you look at this,
that'd be cool.
yeah, I agree. If you look at this depiction here, you'll see that the magnetic field, it's going outward, right, centrifugal, and then you have the dielectric, which is inertial and centripetal, right? And so you see it's actually going at an angle relative to the center. It's angular relative to the center. This has been hijacked to claim that the Earth is a ball that spins. That's what happened. Okay, like, it's just what all physics shows us. There is nothing that doesn't have magneto properties that exist. Everything is intrinsically dielectric, thus has a magnetic component, even if incoherent. Right now, it would be completely illogical to not acknowledge that the Earth is a coherent system, meaning the cosmos around the Earth is a coherent system because it's perpetually moving, right? So it must be coherent. Thus, with coherent, you have the dielectric and the magnetic, like shown right here. You have the radially outward, the radially inward forces. Specifically, you have an inertial set of forces that are radially inward, that's centripetal. So this has been hijacked to say that the Earth is a spinning ball. And this is my opinion. This is the cause of the motion in the sky.
That makes so much sense why we get a different measurement at different altitudes.
Exactly, bro.
Wow.
And even latitudes.
Yeah, I've never
Would even
seen
make
that
sense of
picture
latitudes.
before on the right. That's awesome.
Dude, it's a trip. So this is my interpretation of when they're starting to talk about the centripetal. What they're doing is coming from this, like, still assume the Earth's a globe and assume Newtonian mechanics, right? And we know that that's not correct. But you see in this middle here, it has us, that plane would be where we live, right in the middle. So pretty fascinating. Like, and so it's basically, there's a tornado of motion causing everything to move around, and thus this has the conjugate, which just means the flip side of the coin, the other side. So conjugate geometric expression is a fancy way of saying the inside of the donut compared to the outside of the donut.
Yeah, and it's amazing that all this lines up, on a scale. Like in a little wire, when you run voltage through it from the positive or the high potential to the low potential, however positive, negative we'll call it. So the electric field flows in that direction. So you point your thumb in that direction, and then you curl your fingers around and make them a fist, and that will be the way your curl of your fingers is the way the magnetic field will be moving. That's the right-hand rule. So if you take your thumb, and since the electric field is coming from above and going down to below our feet, we point our thumb down at the center, and everything in the sky will revolve above your head in that counterclockwise formation when you're looking up from beneath. Just like it works in the wire. We see that on a grand scale with this place we live. The right-hand rule is right there in front of us.
Exactly, bro. And what's so crazy is this dielectric component would actually have something to do with the electric downward bias that we experience as well.
Yep.
Yeah. It's right there in front of us. Conveniently, it's the part of physics that has been omitted. You go to the top levels of science right now and you ask them what magnetism is, and they'll just start stuttering like Richard Feynman talking about an ice skater. Right? Like they can't answer the question. It's been omitted because it doesn't comport to their interpretation. All of a sudden, it makes a stationary plane geometry that's in the center of the cosmos make perfect sense physically. What a coincidence that the parts of physics that have been omitted provide perfect physical explanations of a geocentric Earth. All right, so I'm going to play a little bit more of this video. Let me check on a leader real fast and give me just a couple minutes. We're going to play because they're going to start explaining it. Keep in mind what we're talking about here, the conjugate geometric expression of the centrifugal divergence, centripetal convergence. I know that sounds a bit wordy, but just kind of digest it. Good?
That's like it's word salad.
Yeah, word salad, yeah. And just keep in mind this picture here. I may even like put it over here to the side so that we can continue to see it as we watch the video, so that you guys can kind of apply this to what they're saying and understand, take the good with the bad, and leave the bad, right? All right, cool.
As we can see, Wikipedia has replaced the phrase, total fictitious force, with, quote, radially inward component of acceleration, unquote. This language is tailor-made for the geocentric system. In other words, as the universe rotates, it produces a Coriolis acceleration and a centrifugal acceleration. We will leave out the Euler acceleration for now since it is of little consequence. Since the Coriolis acceleration is twice the magnitude of the centrifugal acceleration, this will result in a radially inward acceleration that is directed toward the center of rotation, that is, toward the center of mass, the Earth. In geocentric terms, this means that all the celestial bodies in the universe will experience a net centripetal force on them toward the universe's center of mass. As noted earlier, this center of mass is shared by the universe and the Earth. In turn, this means that all the celestial bodies of the universe will revolve around the Earth and will be held in place by the net centripetal force generated by the Coriolis and centrifugal forces. This is why, in the geocentric system, the Sun does not fall toward the Earth in the center, or why the stars do not do so as well. The inertial forces from the rotating universe keep them all in their present positions. Meanwhile, because the Earth is the center of mass for the rotating universe and thus shares a center of mass with the universe, by definition, the Earth will not move unless the universe moves laterally, but in the geocentric system the universe's only movement is circular or angular since it has no other place to move. But because the surface of the Earth is 4,000 miles from the center of mass that the Earth and the universe share, the surface of the Earth will experience a small amount of the inertial forces generated by the rotating universe, both centrifugal and Coriolis. But since the Coriolis force is split and balanced at the Earth's equator, which is verified by the fact that the northern Coriolis force causes hurricanes in the northern hemisphere to turn counterclockwise, while the southern Coriolis force causes hurricanes in the southern hemisphere to turn clockwise, and no hurricanes occurring at the equator, this means there is no torque on the Earth and thus it will not rotate.
Okay. I don't know if anyone wants to jump in here, but this is a claim, and although it is typically true, there's actually hurricanes in the south that go the other way. But yeah, like what do you guys think? Because it goes back to this depiction I just showed. Sorry, it goes back to this depiction I just showed, right? Where it actually has both centrifugal and centripetal motion, and then based on your latitude, you're going to get different effects.
Yeah, not all the time we have anti-clockwise cyclones, for example, or tornadoes here in South America. We have exceptions and also happen in the north. It's a tendency, but it's not just that situation all the time, 100%. In terms of this type of images, and I have in one of my presentations, The Electric Universe, the Berkeley University did an experiment trying to replicate this in a stationary tank with water, dropping bubbles of ink and in the fluid, in the water. And the only way that you can achieve this type of cyclone shape is in a stationary tank. If you start rotating the tank and you're trying to make this, it's all going outwards, and it's all going inwards, and you just have one big cyclone in the middle, but you cannot have this distribute along a surface, for example, like we have in our real world. I mean, there is not going all these cyclones to Polaris. We have a lot of in different regions of the world.
Now,
yeah, exactly.
Is there like a certain time of the year? I know we have hurricane season, cyclone seasons, and I know they happen out of season sometimes. Is that when you get them to go in opposite directions? I'm just thinking, like, if the sun and moon are both near Capricorn, you're going to see things happen, north of the equator between Capricorn that are going to kind of be opposite of what you would see if it were down near, like, say, or at Cancer, if that makes any sense. Like, where the sun and moon are, is that in relation to which way we see these spinning off the equator?
Maybe they have the relation, and it all matters of the initial condition. Maybe you can have the initial condition, it's that you have anti-clockwise and clockwise depend of the hemisphere or emit plane, but maybe you can alter the initial condition based on temperature or some vorticity in the air, and the cyclones start forming in the opposite way, and that is what you see after, in the end, something that is going against that supposedly it is, but because it suffers something in the initial condition where the cyclones start created. That's my quick answer.
Yeah, if I had to take a guess, I would say that this motion we see near the equator and the vortices that it creates, I believe it would have to do with the sun and moon heating and cooling things along that path constantly. Heating, cooling, and just constantly changing things in that circular motion right there.
Well, I am looking here. Let me, if I don't know if I able to share screen.
Yes.
Okay, let me just one moment, because I have a few videos that maybe, add some ideas to discuss based on this topic, because in fact I want to share also the video that I comment before, because it's better than my English, a lot of images or video. Let me just here, I think I have here, and let me just share the screen. I think, okay.
I love a good Iru screen share.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah, you're good.
Okay, so I'm presenting, right?
Yes.
I see you.
Okay, so here is the experiment that I talking about. For example, here you have a rotating model. It's just regular water, and they just drop some ink in the tank, and this is a stationary model. Then what they did is just moving this fin there to produce a motion. And when you start looking, you can see, for example, in the stationary model, you can create like our type of cyclones. And in fact, this is an overlay video put in by them. This is not put in by me. I never use something that says source NASA, but you can recreate this in the stationary model. Of course, this is not a scale, and this is what happened in the rotating model. So we all the memes that we see like this, it cannot be produced in this shape if the whole Earth is moving, because you're gonna break apart this balance, this column of gas, for example, because of course we have different rotating forces along the vertical axis. If we are, and I don't know if it's called angular acceleration, but in the rotating model you can see how behave a fluid, and it's not what we see in our real world in terms of these big scenarios like cyclones, tornadoes, things like that. In the stationary model, you can produce and you can simulate what we see in terms of the storms, where you can have the shape and the dynamic of a cyclone, and you can recreate and replicate many of these dynamics along a biggest surface. But if everything is rotating, suddenly sooner or later you're gonna have all concentrated in the center point, and then you can remember this explanation from Brian Mullin. And then here, for example, you have another situation based on magnet, not just in dynamic via a turbulence and vorticity producing a water, but this is a nanogas. What is produced here, it's very cold, and this is a magnet, neodymium magnet in the center, and you can see how this interacts, and you can see how you can have counter clockwise and clockwise spin based on the middle, where the magnet is in the middle. I don't know if I explained correctly, but you can see that we can have anti-clockwise and clockwise. And if you transfer this idea to a circular Gleason map where the sun, the moon interact, in terms of electricity and magnetism, circling our Earth, of course, you're going to have these opposite rotations based on the sun, which is in the middle, in the equator. So again, you have at least a few explanations, more via dynamic situation with brute force, which is the vorticity and turbulence produced by a motion, but also with the temperature and things like that. And you can also interact or change direction or create direction based on fluid and magnetic forces and electricity, of course.
Wow, I love this one.
Yeah, you change the polarity on the magnet, and of course you're going to have the opposite fluid, and then you have with the magnet interacting with light, or so-called light. In this case, this is from our friend Ken Wheeler.
Yep.
Putting a magnet into a TV monitor and interact with electrons. And,
Electrons.
Electron, yeah. And if you imagine this, and the sun produced this interaction with fluids based on heating, of course, the air surrounding and other forces, you can have that initial condition. Then maybe you have another, column of air, cold air coming into, and they change the rotation, but the tendency, it's clockwise and anti-clockwise, but not because the Earth is a sphere rotating around its own axis and around the sun. You can explain much, much better with this, because remember this first experiment. You need to show me how, and this is, of course, a flat surface. This is still a flat tank with a flat water. You need to put a sphere and water, so it's crazy thing in terms of a heliocentric model to recreate those models. And I think I don't have any else to share based on this topic in this PowerPoint, so I'm going to stop sharing.
Nice.
Okay, so maybe I was looking at that wrong. In that picture I saw Iru show, it just showed that the centripetal wasn't actually moving inwards. It was just moving in the opposite direction. Like it was going in a 45 to the right, while the centrifugal was going more of a 45 to the left on the outer edge. Is that how it actually is? And centripetal isn't actually facing inwards?
Well,
I think yes. Or Austin, go ahead, please.
Well, I mean, it's an interesting question as it pertains exactly to the Earth, because obviously with the geometry of the magnet. Ryan, I'm sorry.
That's okay. She just wants to get her 2 cents in too.
Yeah, but it isn't, at least for me, it's very difficult to trying to recreate in the sphere model. All the labs in the labs, of course, they use all a flat surface, and that is the initial condition. It's a flat surface with the water level or a fluid, but they never produce in their own model, which implies, at least, it doesn't matter the scale, but you need to prove that in the sphere.
Mm-hmm. And still to date, I haven't seen anything, observation done like with a sphere object.
Yeah.
And getting anything to happen really with it that they say happens on the globe Earth. Not one. I can't think of one. I remember they were saying about creating an ionosphere where they had their little sphere there, and they were charging it with a lower potential and then bombarding it with huge amounts of electrostatics, and it was creating kind of this ionization of the gas right near the surface of the sphere. It's like, okay, yeah, that's nice, all nice and dandy. Now do that in a vacuum. And they can't.
No,
they can't do that.
They can't. No. That is why, at least in terms of experimentation, when you want to use a control environment, it's really difficult to experiment in the more basics dynamics of a spherical world. We are not talking maybe things like quantum physics or things that, of course, it doesn't matter the shape of where you are. We are talking about just basics physics.
Well, yeah, I mean, so many things are, they're quantifiable. Like electricity, if it happens on a small scale, it happens on a larger scale. Same thing with magnetics. But then we come to this thing called gravity where there is no scale.
No,
It's
gravity
on
is-
out there. Yeah, and here it's not here. You can't do it.
It's like gravity only works for the supermassive celestial objects for Narnia, basically.
Yeah, where everything
Yeah.
else is on a scalable system.
No, and in fact, they don't even have a direct observation of that supposed attraction of the masses in the Newtonian model, of course, because after all, we never saw a celestial body came into another celestial body.
Did any of the scientists ever go back and add back in all the dark matter into the local observations of the solar system?
Well, I don't know exactly, but if they cannot observe the dark matter and the dark energy, I don't think they can
I just meant, like,
integrate in any. Of course, they can assume, they can suppose how much of that Narnia magic force is, but it's just plug a number and let the computer do the rest.
I mean, you got this. They have all these supposed masses, right? And then they go and they look out and they see, oh crap, we have to add in all this extra mass. I mean, I don't believe that they ever went back and corrected the masses of the planets and all this other stuff to incorporate for this, 97%, 91% mass.
Yeah, I haven't seen a definitive statement yet, but I have seen them poking about this question about how much dark matter exists in our solar system now. So they're starting to breach the topic, but nobody's saying, oh, yes, there has to be dark matter right here, this or that. At least not that I've seen. But I know there are, all these papers that come out. I get a lot of the space.com and all that kind of stuff. I get it recommended all the time. And I've seen it brought up, I think, twice in the last year now. Them questioning the amount of dark matter causing things at the edge of our solar system, they'll say, things like that.
I don't know, it's crazy, man. I mean, this type of discussion, it's really nice to have in, 21st century, and but it's crazy that you need to convince people that we are in a stationary flat plane with which is, your first experience. I mean, it's something we back at the beginning of time trying to explain ourselves why we are here, where we are, what is all this called life, and it's amazing because, at least for me, it does. Of course, we jump in this discussion based on the geometrical problem, but at the end, when you start digging into it, it's not the less important thing, but because it was maybe the first key to open the Pandora doors. But at the end, it's they trying to create a cosmology. It's simply as that. They put us into a system where they control the narrative and they create this Narnia cosmology, and everyone agree without even putting it into a test.
Well, it is interesting, right? They say 83% of all the universe's matter is dark matter, and then dark matter and dark energy make up 96%. But conveniently, it was only discovered where they didn't previously account for gravity or make the observations, right? So they made the solar system model with their theory of gravity based on what we see, and then they made it further discoveries that didn't match it, and so conveniently, that's the only place dark matter is.
Yeah, it's just like the Coriolis. It's a very selective force, or very selective phenomena.
Well, yeah, you can almost add it into gravity as part of their holy trinity. It's their fictitious force that they need to hold this place together. So yeah, dark matter, dark energy, they've been claiming it for quite a while now. And I even remember seeing a couple demonstrations about them claiming that they were measuring dark matter, but the guy was laughed out of physics because his test was just dumb. It was.
I really like the idea that supposedly the universe is full with stars and light, but everything is dark. Dark energy, you know, dark matter. It's the dark side of our existence, the universe, you know.
Dark Rise.
Yeah, it's crazy, yeah. And it's magic, not magic, but it is a religion in all senses. I mean, it's archetype. It's when you start compare, it's just that. We are, in fact, I really follow the teachings of Carl Jung, and one of the last books that he wrote, it's called, I don't know how to say in English, but it's called about the myth of those things that we see in the sky. And he addressed the topic of the alien encounters and alien, you know, contact. And he concluded that we are in the presence of how myths are created in terms of religion. And that is the next myth. I mean, they need to put they need to create the ground for the new myth. And the ground for the new myth, which is, in my opinion, the aliens, saviors, well, they need to first create the ground. And the ground is the heliocentric model. It's a Big Bang universe.
Well, what do you think about them using this whole alien thing to basically use it as an excuse to cover up all their mistakes in physics, right? Like the wave-particle duality paradox, the instantaneous action at distance paradox, all these paradoxes they have within cosmology, dark matter, dark energy, and then all their quantum. Well, the aliens can come. They're just a much more advanced civilization. They've had way longer. They're more evolved. They've discovered more. And, you know, they're going to come correct our understanding of physics, and we, you know, it's excusable because we're not as evolved as them, so of course we didn't fully understand it yet, and that way they can kind of get out of just like being blatantly wrong and lying to everyone this whole time. I mean, that's kind of where I am right now. They're like telling everyone, oh, well, current understanding of material sciences can't explain what these UFOs do. Like, oh, okay, why don't you just come out and say that you're trying to get ready to condition us to accept that you're going to have to basically adopt an etheric framework. They'll call it something else, you know, whatever, like nebula energy or whatever, you know, and they won't call it ether. I don't know.
And again, it's the same thing that when they use God to trying to explain things that they cannot explain. So, I mean, for me, it's the same thing. It's something that, you know, we cannot explain, you know, certain things. So in this time, it was the aliens did it. In other time was some supposedly God, and in the, you know, maybe in the far future, who knows? It was the EI who made it.
Yeah, I mean, sorry.
I was just going to add in that the alien technology isn't necessarily unknown just because it's unknown to the public, right? I'm pretty sure that they have, you know, whole bases working on this kind of technology that, you know, just isn't, you know, privy to the common person.
Have you seen all of the articles that have been coming out probably the last 2-3 months now of radio transmissions, radio bursts that they're getting from all different parts of space now? They're able to pick up some they've been recording forever, you know, and they do it a certain way, but now they're finding these other radio bursts that are not like anything else they've ever found before, and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I'm getting bombarded by this. They're saying it's contact from some type of intelligent species or race, because they've never measured any kind of radio burst like this coming from any, you know, solar system or anything like that before, which is a
hilarious.
big step in itself right there. Oh, because we've never seen or measured one before in the vast, huge outreaches of space. So because this one is different, it has to be advanced civilization.
I mean, they just came
No.
out in Congress and freaking said that non-human biologics were discovered in a freaking UFO. I mean,
Yeah, but he only have a mail list of people that supposedly saw it.
correct.
He's not a direct, witness. He's like,
But don't worry, they're gonna come. Don't worry, the government's gonna have some direct witnesses that come out, in my opinion. But just because I did kind of forget, 434, we're gonna switch over to Rockfin. I just dropped a link in the chat. So rockfin.com/globebusters, the specific stream link is dropped in the chat by me and Cami. So click on that, head on over to Rockfin where we can freely speak. And the second half of the show will be over at Rockfin. Again, that's rockfin.com/globebusters. Let me look at any tips that we got so I don't miss it. But do you guys have anything you want to say to the YouTube audience before we get out of here? Give them a few minutes to prepare.
Remember, MPT for all, my new English channel. Just that, in my case. And happy to see everyone in the chat.
Yeah, and if you find yourself having a discussion about these types of things, the movement and this and that, especially with some more educated people, go to Austin's Telegram and you don't even have to memorize the quotes. Just go grab them, put them on your phone to have them at the ready for when you want to talk about things like this. Be like, hey, look, even here they say this is a philosophy. And that should end that part of the debate right there. When you have these, people with letters behind their name that are really well known, some of them even, saying that, yes, this is a belief system that we have, then that should end that part of the debate, at least right there. Whether or not we're at the center or in a heliocentric model, the best that they can say is that it can't be proven either way. That's their best option. Where we can say, well, it is what all the data shows.
I think it's hilarious that they admit that it's unfalsifiable, right? Because if you can't prove it either way, then it's an unfalsifiable position, which means that it's not science. So we're right in asserting that they are engaging in pseudoscience, right? As for the people of YouTube, thanks for watching. Much love. Join us over on Rockfin. And if you do enjoy, speaking of debates, Zach, thanks for bringing that up. We have been doing one almost daily, so go check it out on the Troubling Tribune channel. You can be entertained. You can be infuriated. You may learn a thing or two. We appreciate it.
Yeah, it's not letting me fully read the super chats. I'm just going to guess which ones they are. And so Lord Racer, $10. Happy to be here with you all today. Thank you for the support, brother. Commercial Sound and Video, $5. Thank you for the support as always. And Billy Philly 22, may the truth bring you to the creator. Much love is what I'm assuming it says at the end. Thank you for the $5 super chat on YouTube. Sorry, it's not loading up the super chats. For some reason, it's just a blank screen. It's not letting me see it. But okay, cool.
Sometimes
so we're going to...
happen to me.
Yeah. Oh, well, Rockfin doesn't do that. So we'll see you guys over at Rockfin, rockfin.com/globebusters. And we will continue the discussion. Thank you guys for hanging out on YouTube, and it is set to free on Rockfin. No excuse not to go over there. Links in this chat, and we will catch up with you guys over there. Peace out.
Peace, everybody.
All right. Let me